Misinformation fuels harassment of U.S. poll workers. U.S. billionaires pump $880 million into midterm elections. Thousands gather at Minneapolis Muslim convention. Imran Khan says he was aware of assassination attempt beforehand. 185 countries at UN General Assembly vote, asking U.S. to end embargo on Cuba. Canada to admit 1.4 million immigrants in 3 years to address labor shortages. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight: persistent conspiracy theories from the 2020 U.S. presidential election are fueling harassment against poll workers in some states. Poll workers are reporting such falsehoods are complicating their task and stoking fears of violent threats ahead of next Tuesday's midterm elections. Richard Keach, Deputy Registrar in Loudoun County, Virginia, reported getting a lot more calls this year from voters about misinformation. Voters are taking matters into their own hands, egged on by baseless claims of fraud from former President Donald Trump and supporters. Election officials are warning of real consequences for the democratic process. Among the misinformation is whether voting machines are connected to the internet, a false narrative that spread online in 2020. Voting machines are typically not online and not vulnerable to hacking while polls are open.
It's definitely gotten tougher. The level of outrage can sometimes be difficult. It definitely gets difficult to do your job when you've got a ton of people watching you, kind of waiting for you to make a mistake.
A Washington Post ABC News poll reveals nearly 9 in 10 Americans are concerned political divisions have increased the risk of politically motivated violence. U.S. billionaires have funneled $880 million into midterm elections that will be held next Tuesday, according to a new report. Americans for Tax Fairness uses Federal Election Commission data from Open Secrets. It revealed a group of 465 billionaires pumped more than $881 million into races as of September 30th. That's a 44% increase in billionaire contributions during the 2018 midterm cycle, which totaled $611 million. The report noted, by a 3-2 margin, more billionaire cash is supporting Republicans, who received 59%, than Democrats, who got 39%. George Soros topped the donor list with a contribution of more than $128 million to Democratic candidates. Richard and Elizabeth Uline, owners of the Uline shipping supply company, gave $67 million to Republican candidates. Former President Donald Trump's legal team saw U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas as their best shot to prevent congressional certification of the 2020 election results. That's according to email conversations published Wednesday by Politico. A federal judge recently ordered former President Donald Trump's lawyer, John Eastman, to share emails with the House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack. Eastman is considered the architect of the plot to overturn the election victory of President Joe Biden. The January 6 insurrection briefly delayed the certification process as Congress came under siege. Justice Thomas handles emergency appeals out of the 11th Circuit, which includes Georgia. He has faced calls to leave the court or recuse himself from 2020 election-related cases due to efforts by his right-wing activist wife, Ginny Thomas, to keep Trump in power. David Colson, a Muslim man who was imprisoned in California, has been released after 2 decades behind bars. The 55-year-old was arrested for stealing $14 while he was homeless and sentenced to life in prison. Experts say thousands of inmates like Colson remain in California prisons, sentenced to life due to legislation passed in the 1990s. Judge Daniel Lowenthal, at a September 13 hearing, told Colson, "I'm shocked and angry at how you were treated by the system." California's 3 strikes law contributed to the explosion of its prison population and an overcrowding disaster. More than 33,000 people remain incarcerated under the law today. Of those serving life sentences due to 3 strikes law, 45% are Black. Black residents make up only 6.5% of the state's population. More than 10,000 Muslims met Saturday for a 1-day conference in Minneapolis. It was one of the largest Muslim gatherings in the state since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Several Minnesota mosques organized the event, led by Dar al-Farouk Center and the Muslim American Society. It marked the 18th consecutive annual convention aimed at educating participants about Islam and encouraging Muslim youth to learn from older and wiser community members. Khalid Umar, one of the main organizers and convention co-chair, credited the convention's diversity for its continued growth. This year's theme was learning from the legends, he said. Organizers said the turnout was significantly higher than last year. Israeli forces killed 4 Palestinians on Thursday, including an alleged attacker and Palestinian fighter, officials said. Violence flared across Israeli-annexed East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank. 2 Palestinians were shot dead by Israeli forces in the northern West Bank city of Jenin, authorities said. They were 14-year-old Mohammed Samar Khalouf and 28-year-old Farouk Salame. 4 others suffered gunshot wounds, the Palestinian Health Ministry said. Israel's army said Salame was the target of a raid and described him as an operative belonging to the Islamic Jihad organization. The army blamed Salame for several recent attacks targeting Israeli forces. Soldiers raided a building in Jenin after receiving intelligence Salame was inside. After an initial gun battle, Salame fled. Soldiers followed and killed him after he pulled out a gun, the army said. Thousands of activists from Bangladesh's main political opposition parties protested in the capital Dhaka on Wednesday. They demanded the cases against former Prime Minister Begum Khalida Zia be withdrawn. Demonstrators demanded Zia be allowed to run in general elections next year. Leaders and supporters of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party urged the government to immediately withdraw all cases against the 3-time premier and BNP chairperson. They claimed the cases against her were politically motivated and fabricated. Zia has been imprisoned for nearly 17 years after being convicted of 2 counts of corruption. She's now on medical parole after contracting COVID-19 while incarcerated. Anisul Haq, the country's law minister, has warned the opposition party that Zia could be sent back to jail before the next national election. Imran Khan says he was aware of assassination attempts. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. if we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hena Zuberi. Congratulations, Marylanders. North American Muslims now have their own TV channel. Join the Muslim Network TV team for the Maryland premiere on Friday, November 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the University of Maryland College Park Alumni Center. You'll hear from Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid, the president of Sound Vision and the CEO of Justice for All. You'll also hear from me as I anchor Muslim Network TV. Joining us will be Dr. Amina McLeod, a scholar of Islam and the retired professor of religious studies at DePaul University, including Samana Siddiqui, journalist and content manager and anchor of Muslim Network TV. Muslim Network TV is available via traditional satellite in addition to Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. It also streams live on YouTube, Facebook, and on its website, Muslim Network TV. Join us again at the University of Maryland Alumni Center on November 11th at 7 p.m. See you there. Welcome back. Addressing Pakistanis from the hospital, Imran Khan said he knew of a planned assassination attempt a day before it happened. Khan accused U.S. diplomat Donald Lu for threatening the Pakistani ambassador that the country will face difficulties if the former premier is not removed. Protesters across Pakistan burnt tires and blocked traffic following the assassination attempt on Khan. One person was killed and 14 others injured, including Khan, in an assassination attempt in Wazirabad. Khan began the long march from Lahore to Islamabad on October 28, demanding early elections. His government was removed through a no-confidence vote in Parliament in April. Authorities in East Turkestan have collected the bodies of 90 Uyghur residents in the northeastern city of Gulja who died during a strict coronavirus lockdown. The Chinese government refers to the region as Xinjiang. However, they did not inform the families of the deceased about whether their loved ones' remains were handled according to Islamic burial rituals, local officials said. Gulja, known as Yining in Chinese, has been under lockdown since early August due to outbreaks of the COVID-19 virus. It has led to deaths from starvation or lack of access to medicine in the city of roughly 500,000 people, mainly Uyghur and other Turkic Muslims, RFA reports. About 90 people died in Gulja during the lockdown, according to a member of the city's coronavirus pandemic working group. The Muslim president of the National Union of Students in the United Kingdom was dismissed through Twitter on the first day of Islamophobia Awareness Month. Shaima Dalali, a Muslim woman of Tunisian descent, was elected in March to lead the national student body. Soon after, she was placed under investigation following complaints of antisemitism and homophobia relating to tweets dating back to 2012. Dalali subsequently apologized for her tweets and welcomed the investigation into her actions. In September, the Federation of Student Islamic Societies said it was dismayed at Dalali's treatment. The group said it would encourage its members to launch disaffiliation campaigns against the National Union. Villali is the first president to be dismissed in the student union's 100-year-old history. Canada will be introducing new selection tools next year to help the immigration system better target sectors in need of workers. Immigration Minister Sean Fraser said Tuesday, healthcare and construction are among those sectors with the highest need for laborers. He said the country's latest immigration targets are 465,000 permanent residents in 2023, 485,000 in 2024, and 500,000 in 2025. The numbers are higher than last year's plan, targeting over 447,000 newcomers in 2023 and 450,000 in 2024. The new mechanism will attract newcomers with the skills that will be in demand in Canada, he said. On Thursday at the United Nations General Assembly, 185 countries voted, calling upon the United States ending its economic, commercial, and financial embargo on Cuba. The embargo has been in place for 60 years. Only the U.S. and Israel voted against the resolution, with Brazil and Ukraine abstaining. The General Assembly's resolutions are usually not legally binding and not enforceable. However, they reflect global opinion. Tuesday's vote gave Cuba a chance to highlight the U.S.'s continued efforts to isolate the country. The embargo was imposed in 1960. This was following the Cuban Revolution, which swept Fidel Castro into power. Castro's nationalized all properties belonging to U.S. citizens and corporations. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Assalamu alaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. 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 And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam is and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
Welcome back. To talk about preventing political violence during elections, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Hena.
As we all know, Election Day is coming up, and we would like to discuss the threat of violence that is hanging over the 2022 midterm elections. What can be done about this? What are the threats that are out there? Why do these threats exist? To discuss this, we're happy to welcome on our special guest, Mr. Tom Hastings, who is the director of the Peace Voice program and also secretary of the Oregon Peace Institute. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm just fine, and it's a great honor to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So first, Tom, the elections are just days away. We've obviously already seen some violence occur, an attack on the husband of Nancy Pelosi. We've seen armed so-called poll watchers in Arizona. What are some of these, and can you tell us about incidents of violence that are occurring out there or threats of violence, and why is this happening? Is this normal for election season, or is there something uniquely dangerous about this election season?
Well, it might have been normal when Ferdinand Marcos, the original, was president of the Philippines, and people were attacked during the campaigns and during the actual voting. But no, it's not normal in the United States. I'm an old man in my 70s, and this is something like I've never seen before.
Gotcha. So what do you think is the reason for this? I mean, because, I think back to the 60s and the 50s, back before people had the right to vote, extreme violence then. But ever since then, once the right to vote was mostly settled, you haven't had political assassinations for the most part. You haven't had, outward violence. But now it seems like the threat is back. Why is that? And what are some of the manifestations of it?
Well, I mean, we are so polarized, as we all know now, and this was greatly exacerbated during the 2016 campaign by Trump. He basically encouraged violence at his rallies, offered, for example, to go ahead and hit somebody. I'll pay your legal fees and your fines, which really kind of juiced up the worst in people. And the research now is showing, though, that the fear of violence from the quote other side really creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, where both sides tend to be much more ready to commit violence. Obviously, the supporters of the QAnon and Oath Keepers and so forth on the right are the ones initiating most of it. But it would really help if they were reassured. We still live in a democracy, and you don't have to worry about the government coming into your home. It's going to be okay. They need to be comforted, and when they are met with a lot of hostility and counter threats of violence, then it only seems to spiral downward.
What do you expect to happen after Election Day? It seems there's some concern that people may just simply not accept election results they don't like, and that after, as we saw in 2020, violence could erupt again. Is there any indication that could happen again? Or, because Republicans are now expected to win, is there an expectation that they'll accept those election results and there won't be any sort of violent backlash, at least from that side of the aisle?
Well, that's really bizarre. I think that they have to be assured of victory, or else they go on the violent attack. So there is, this election is going to be close. Maybe they will prevail in both Senate and House. I mean, it's been very bizarre when we see these election, frankly, liars, deniers and liars. Not only when they lose, but when they win, they even say, well, I would have won much bigger if there were not all this fraud. We can look, I think, for some really good analysis about this at the Brennan Center for Justice. Their website has some really cogent reports that really help us understand, and they look in particular at 10 states where this is most likely, obviously, as you say, beginning with Arizona.
Gotcha. So in Arizona, there was an incident there, I believe, with armed men wearing bulletproof vests, acting as poll workers, something to that effect. Can you tell us about what's happening in Arizona? And also there's a candidate there, Carrie Lake, I think, who is, very vocally a denier of the authenticity of the 2020 election results. Is that state of particular concern or no different than others?
I mean, I think it's only a little bit of an augury of elsewhere. One of the sort of underlying or factors in this is that because of the Supreme Court rulings on open carry and the inability for states in many cases to pass laws that will withstand a hearing at the Supreme Court to limit or stop open carry, we have this phenomenon that we see in Michigan and other places where people are walking around with some pretty big weaponry and being very intimidating. The voter intimidation laws, there are intimidation laws both federally and in some of the states, and it's very hard to have sort of even-handed application or enforcement of those. Sometimes they're relatively vague, and these court cases then can drag on for a long time. And we're not in a good environment with the judiciary, on the federal side, all the way from the district to the appellate to the Supreme Court, as we all know. So this is very hard to enforce, the voter intimidation that we see. Okay, so here's one possible way to address some of this, and that is to just stop with all the polling places. I mean, have them still, but make it much more like where I live in Oregon. Frankly, we don't have issues here. I mean, it's everybody gets their ballot in the mail. The state not only you can mail your ballot back, and you don't have to opt in. You're in the system. As soon as you're a registered voter, they're going to mail you ballots and voter guides with statements by candidates, explanations by both sides of initiatives and referenda, and then they even pay the return postage. So the state makes it so easy, and it removes the opportunities for this voter intimidation and poll watcher or poll worker intimidation that we see in places that carry on with the, frankly, a time-honored tradition of having polls. But it's really time to move past that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, I guess depending on what happens with this election, if violence does break out, then I think some states might be looking at alternate ways to let people vote potentially, but hopefully we'll not come to that, God willing. Tom, before I let you go, tell us a bit about Peace Voice program and the Oregon Peace Institute for those who may not be familiar with the work and what's going on in Oregon, please.
Sure. Peace Voice is something that I started after the two big lies told by Bush and Cheney allowed the American people to believe that it was okay to invade and occupy Iraq. And it was like everybody on the peace side, everybody internationally, not everybody, but it certainly was obvious to many, many people that these were lies. And so I thought, well, who's believing these lies? And it's the people who are served by Fox News, frankly. And I lived in an area in Wisconsin in the far north that was served by Fox News. And I know how small town newspapers, I know how their editors think. And so I put together a list. I mean, not just me, but volunteers helped me put together a list of editors from small town papers across the country. So we send out alternative points of view. We send out peace and justice, environmental messages, messages of tolerance, messages of just getting along. And so every single piece that we send out is going to be picked up by an average of 8 newspapers here and there. We reach something like 16 million people a month. I want to mention just one more thing about the voter intimidation.
Sure, go ahead, please.
One answer to this is that there is a network of peace teams who accompany poll workers, and that's called the Shanti Sena Network. You can find them on Facebook, for example, but their sort of mothership is the Meta Peace Team in Lansing, Michigan, and they work across the country and around the world, and they are going to be helping at the polls. They are already helping at the polls, so that's one resource we all have.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of this information, letting us know what's happening out there. Again, we are hoping, God willing, for a safe election. I know some horrible things have already happened. We hope to see nothing more, but glad to hear that there are people out there working to try to make this as safe as a process as possible. So thank you, Tom. We look forward to having you back in to get updates on this. God willing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Hena, we'll send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Edward. Let's pray for peaceful elections. That's all from our Washington studios tonight, where our team welcomes you to the Maryland premiere at the University of Maryland on November 11th at 7 p.m. Please do join us. And thank you for joining us in today's broadcast. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.